The rain poured down like 1,000 broken strings, washing the city in silver tears. Inside the small hospital room, the sound of the storm echoed faintly through the window, mingling with the steady beeping of a heart monitor. James stood frozen by the bedside, his hands trembling as he looked at the fragile figure lying before him. Diep's face was pale, her lips dry, her breathing shallow but steady. The white hospital sheets swallowed her small frame, making her look even more delicate. Only a few hours earlier, she had collapsed at the market while helping a neighbor carry vegetables. The doctor had said it was exhaustion. Weeks of overwork and sleepless nights had pushed her body to its limit. James could still remember the moment the phone rang. Tuan, his assistant, had stammered through the call. "Sir, it's Diep. She fainted. They've taken her to St. Mary's Hospital." The world had blurred then. Meetings, deadlines, investors. All of it disappeared into a cloud of noise as James ran out of his office, the rain slicing across his face. Now standing here, he could barely breathe. He reached for her hand, cold, fragile, lifeless in his palm. His throat tightened as guilt tore through him. He was the one who told her to rest, to stop worrying about him. Yet she had kept working, cooking, walking in the rain, waiting for him to come home from the company's endless chaos. "Why didn't you listen to me, Diep?" he whispered, though he knew the question was really for himself. The hospital lights cast soft halos around her face, and for a moment she looked peaceful. Too peaceful. James sank into the chair beside her, his eyes burning. Memories flooded his mind, Diep waiting for him with a warm bowl of soup when he came home late, her laughter echoing in the kitchen, her gentle hands pressing his temples when stress made his head ache. He had promised himself that one day he would give her everything she deserved, a home, a ring, a life without fear. But now, watching her lie there so still, he realized he had given her nothing but worry. Outside, thunder rolled like a wounded heart. Inside, James bowed his head, gripping her hand tighter. "Please wake up," he murmured, his voice breaking. "You can't leave me like this. I can't lose you, Diep." His tears fell silently onto her wrist. For the first time in years, the man who had built an empire felt utterly powerless, and somewhere deep inside him, a vow began to take shape. A vow that would define every heartbeat, every breath from this moment on. He didn't know that, miles away, his mother was already on her way, traveling through the storm, her heart heavy with fear. But James didn't care about anything beyond this room, beyond the fragile pulse beneath his fingertips. The monitors beeped softly, keeping time with her heart and his. And as the rain continued to fall, James whispered into the darkness, almost like a prayer he wasn't sure anyone could hear. "Please don't take her from me." The night stretched long, and James did not move from Diep's side. The rain had softened to a drizzle by dawn, leaving the world washed clean and quiet. The smell of disinfectant filled the hospital corridor, mingling with the faint scent of lilies placed at the nurse's desk. James's eyes were red and tired. He hadn't slept, not even for a moment. Every time Diep stirred or sighed in her sleep, his heart leapt with hope and fear at once. He wanted to be strong, but the truth was, he was terrified. Terrified that he might wake up and find her gone. Just as he lowered his head to her hand again, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed down the hallway. The door opened, and there she was, his mother, Mrs. Huyen, her gray scarf still damp from the rain. She had traveled nearly 200 kilometers overnight, refusing to wait until morning when she heard the news. "James!" she called softly, her voice trembling with exhaustion and worry. He turned, startled. "Mom? What are you doing here?" "I had to come," she said, breathless. Her eyes darted toward the bed, and when she saw Diep lying so pale, she stopped short. For a long moment, she said nothing, only stood there, her chest rising and falling as tears filled her eyes. "This is her," she whispered. "This is the girl who stood by you through everything." James nodded silently, emotion tightening his throat. She's too kind, Mom. She always puts others first. I didn't see how much she was hurting." Mrs. Huyen walked slowly toward Diep's bedside. Her hands, though lined with age, moved with the gentleness of a mother's touch. She brushed a strand of hair from Diep's forehead and sighed, her voice breaking. Poor child, she looked so fragile. James's mother turned to him, her expression shifting from sorrow to quiet determination. "Go and rest for a bit. I'll stay with her." But James shook his head. I can't leave her. Mrs. Huyen studied her son for a long moment, her heart tightening. She saw the dark circles under his eyes, the way his shoulders trembled with fatigue, the helplessness that had replaced his usual confidence. She reached out and touched his arm. You love her deeply, don't you? He didn't hesitate. More than anything, a small knowing smile crossed her face, the kind only a mother could give. Then listen to me, James. Love is not just about being near someone. It's about protecting them, even when they don't ask for it, even when it hurts. Her words struck something deep within him. He swallowed hard, glancing back at Diep. She looked peaceful now, her breathing steadier, her skin no longer ghostly pale. Mrs. Hoyen called for the nurse, asking for the hospital's best physician to check on Diep again. Her tone was calm but firm, the kind of voice that carried both authority and compassion. Within minutes, the doctor arrived, reviewing the charts and adjusting her medications. As the nurse left, Mrs. Huyen sat beside Diep and gently held her hand. You've been strong for too long, haven't you? She whispered. Now it's time for someone to be strong for you. James watched quietly from behind her, his chest heavy with emotion. The sight of his mother caring for the woman he loved touched him in ways words couldn't describe. When Mrs. Huyen looked up at him again, her eyes glistened. James, she said softly, promise me something. He nodded, his throat tight. Promise me that you'll protect this girl, not just from the world, but from the pain inside her heart. James took a slow breath, his gaze fixed on Diep. I promise, Mom, he said, his voice steady and low. I will protect her for the rest of my life. And though he didn't realize it yet, that simple promise would change everything. Outside, the rain had finally stopped. A thin ray of sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling across Diep's bed. A quiet blessing, a fragile beginning. The first light of morning filtered softly through the window blinds, casting golden streaks across the hospital room. The storm had passed, leaving behind a silence so tender it felt almost sacred. James sat by Diep's side, his mother beside him, both lost in their own quiet thoughts. Then a faint sound broke the stillness. Diep stirred, her fingers twitching slightly beneath the blanket. James leaned forward instantly, his heart racing. Diep, can you hear me? Her eyelids fluttered before slowly opening. Her gaze was unfocused at first, then found him, the familiar face she had dreamed of even in her fevered sleep. James, she whispered weakly. He caught her hand, holding it tightly against his chest. I'm here, he said, his voice trembling with relief. You're safe now. Diep blinked, confused, her voice barely audible. Why are you crying? James hadn't realized he was. His mother reached over and gently touched Diep's shoulder. You scared us, my dear, Mrs. Huyen said softly, her smile kind but watery. You've been through too much. When Diep recognized her, surprise flickered in her tired eyes. You came all the way here? Mrs. Huyen nodded with a tender smile. A mother always comes when her child is in pain. And you, Diep, are part of this family now. Tears welled in Diep's eyes. I don't deserve that kindness, she murmured, her voice trembling. I'm just... James cut her off gently. Don't say that. You've done more for me than anyone else ever could. He brushed his thumb over her knuckles. You've carried my burdens when I was too blind to see yours. You've given me love when I didn't deserve it. He turned to his mother, his voice steady but full of emotion. Mom, I will protect her for the rest of my life, I promise. For a heartbeat, the room went utterly still. Then Mrs. Huyen's eyes filled with tears. She looked at her son, the man she had raised through hardship and pride, and saw not the ambitious CEO the world knew, but the boy who had finally learned what love truly meant. She nodded slowly, her voice breaking. That's all I ever wanted to hear. Diep's lips quivered, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. She tried to speak, but James placed a finger gently on her lips. Shh. You don't have to say anything. Just rest. Let me take care of you now. The beeping of the heart monitor grew steadier, almost like the rhythm of a calm heartbeat. James sat closer, still holding her hand, his thumb tracing slow circles against her skin. A silent vow written not in words but in touch. Mrs. Huyen stood quietly, watching them. The fragile girl her son loved and the man her son had become. A mother's tears fell once more. But this time, they were not tears of fear. They were tears of peace, of gratitude, of something eternal. Outside, sunlight broke fully through the clouds, washing the room in warmth. Diep closed her eyes again, her lips curving into a faint smile. She could still hear his voice, soft, certain, full of promise. "Mom, I will protect her for the rest of my life." And in that moment, she believed him. She believed in love. She believed in tomorrow. 2 days later, the hospital smelled of sunlight and blooming jasmine from the small garden outside. The rain had gone, leaving the air fresh and clean, as if the world itself had begun again. Diep sat by the window, dressed in a light sweater, her cheeks no longer pale. She was still weak, but her eyes were bright, the color of quiet peace. James stood behind her, placing a shawl over her shoulders. His movements were gentle, careful, as though she were something precious he was afraid to break. Mrs. Huyen entered the room carrying a small thermos. "I made some porridge," she said with a smile. "Eat while it's still warm." Diep looked up quickly. "You shouldn't have bothered, Mom." "Mrs. Huyen chuckled softly. "A mother always bothers. That's her way of loving." She sat down beside Diep, pouring the porridge into a bowl. "You've taken care of my son for so long. Now let us take care of you." Tears shimmered in Diep's eyes as she took the bowl with both hands. "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Mrs. Huyen reached out, placing her wrinkled hand gently over Diep's. "Child, you've given James something I never could. Peace. He used to live only for work, chasing things that didn't last. But since you came, he's learned what truly matters." Her voice trembled and her eyes glistened. "You deserve to be happy, Diep. Don't ever doubt that again." James walked over and knelt beside them, his hand finding Diep's. "She's right," he said softly. "Happiness isn't something you earn. It's something you choose. And I choose you every day for the rest of my life." Mrs. Huyen smiled through her tears, her heart full. "That's my son," she whispered. Outside, the sun broke free from the clouds completely, flooding the room with gold. The shadows vanished, replaced by light and laughter. Quiet, genuine, whole. When it was finally time to leave, James helped Diep into the wheelchair, though she protested gently. "I can walk," she said with a shy laugh. "I know," he replied, smiling. "But I promised to protect you, didn't I?" Mrs. Huyen laughed softly as she followed them down the hallway. "And I'll hold you both to that promise." At the hospital gate, the three of them paused. The breeze carried the scent of morning flowers, and for the first time in a long time, everything felt right. Mrs. Huyen placed a hand on both their shoulders. "Go live your life," she said. "Love deeply, forgive easily, and never forget this moment." James nodded, his eyes meeting hers with quiet gratitude. "We won't, Mom." As they walked toward the car, Diep looked back, just once, to see Mrs. Huyen standing there waving, her eyes bright with tears, not tears of sadness, but of love, of peace, of a mother finally letting go. And as James took her hand in his, Diep smiled through her own tears, whispering, "I believe you, James. I believe in us." Together under the wide morning sky, they stepped forward, toward healing, toward hope, toward forever.